What up, YouTube? Schmidtward here, checking in with a Season 12 Suffering Project Diablo 2 Fist of Fires map showcase, declone, Rathma showcase. Yeah, have a few friends playing this build this season. Shout out Tessa. Yeah, just want to kind of go over the build and explain the mechanics and kind of give you my interpretation of the build from a hardcore perspective. I guess first of all, importantly, it's good to kind of go over the fundamental basics of any martial arts assassin build. What those builds focus on is charging up your primary skill and then releasing said charges with either a finishing move or going through the fourth attack of your martial arts attack. Specifically for Fist of Fire, the first charge you get like a ground effect of fire. Does some damage, but nothing all that impressive. The second charge is that fire nova you keep seeing. Then the third charge is the meteors dropping from the air. And yeah, the damage on Fist of Fire is pretty overtuned at the moment. It got a rework going into Season 11. And honestly, it was probably a little overtuned at that point. I think most people who had played the build were possibly expecting a slight nerf. That being said, it was kind of surprising that when the patch notes came out, it was more or less buffed with the changes to Dragonflight. Dragonflight just being kind of your primary movement skill as an assassin. If you're not running Enigma, just makes it very valuable. And it being a 20-point synergy with Fist of Fire means that you're going to have 20 hard points in it. And with the cooldown being reduced based on points now for Dragonflight, instead of needing like the Stalker's Cull to get that reduction, just means that the mobility on Fist of Fire was increased significantly, while at the same time allowing you to use like a Fire Lizards instead of that Stalker's Cull. So you're getting way more pierce. As a hardcore player, I like to use a shield for max block, just because if you use weapon block, there is a cooldown between weapon block, functionality. So it would be down much more often than the shield block, which is never down. So just using a shield is way safer. I know Inferno and most softcore gamers would probably tell you just to go the dual claw route and, either double up on Fire Lizards for even more damage, or, use like a Jade Talon or something to like figure out your res, because you still get the 3 martial arts skills on it, 3 sockets. You could put facets in it if you want. But yeah, that being said, the defensive layer of Assassin having max block plus the mercenary setup that I'm currently running, which is the Prayer Merc in Act 3, the Cold Merc. You get a Plague that you can shop a +3 Prayer base from Act 2 Drognin. You make your Plague in there. You're going to get +4 to 5 to Prayer for the Merc, which just gives you more life on hit. And then, the Merc itself will cast the Ice Bolts, the Blizzard, which is just, reasonable CC in itself. You pair that with an Innocence for the Blade Shield on the Merc, and then you get an Exile Shield on the Merc, which allows you to proc Decrepify whenever you Dragonflight into a pack of mobs. So you can see the Decrep procs almost instantly upon Dragonflighting into a pack. That's incredible CC in itself. And then you get the cold damage and pair that with the damage of the Assassin Fist of Fires, and you are cooking, as the kids say. But that being said, part of the power of the build is actually playing aggressively and Dragonflighting, into the mobs to allow that Decrepify to proc. And this is very important. You want to time your Dragonflight to proc at minimum the second Nova charge, or the second charge of Fist of Fire, which is that Nova. Generally, that will kill any pack you're Dragonflighting into, especially on a tier 1 map. But as you can see, a tier 3 cow map, the Nova is killing most non-elites, most non-champions. So yeah, it's really important to get your 2 charges, and it's, really easy to tell when you get the 2 charges because you will proc that Fire Nova. So once you see the Fire Nova, you're ready to Dragonflight into the next pack, which then will proc another Fire Nova. So the playstyle is pretty much proc your Fire Nova, try to find a big pack to Dragonflight into, to then proc that Fire Nova, and then get, 2 more charges up on the next pack, Dragonflight into the next pack, rinse and repeat. So if you're not charging up, that Fire Nova before you Dragonflight, the attack is going to be not very effective. And on single target, you can use a finishing move just to proc more damage. There's multiple finishing moves you can use if you're not using a dual claw setup. There's the fire finisher, which I tend to use for single target here. If you're using dual claw, I believe the preferred one is the dual claw fizz attack. But yeah, I use that for bosses when I can, but for just mapping, I just use the fire finisher because A, we have a lot of fire pierce, and B, I'm not using 2 claws, so it is what it is. But yeah, so really important to proc the Fire Nova before you Dragonflight in. There obviously are scenarios where you will just proc use Dragonflight just as a strictly movement skill without proccing anything, just because you want to get somewhere faster. And obviously that's totally okay, but ideally you want to be using it to proc that Fire Nova. And generally, once you see the Fire Nova, it's very possible you get a 3rd attack in, which gets you the meteors, and that's just going to be even more damage because you proc each charge when you use your finisher. So you'll get that ground fire off the first proc, you'll get the Fire Nova, and then if you had the 3rd charge, you'll get the meteor. So yeah, when you see the Fire Nova proc, that's when I'm gonna Dragonflight. And honestly, if I'm at a pack, if I Fire Nova into an elite pack and I'm a little concerned that maybe it won't clear it, then I'll just immediately Dragonflight onto the elite and proc that Nova twice in quick succession. Fire immunes are pretty annoying. You can just skip them. Oftentimes I do that, but you can also use Tiger Strike just to zerk them down. You can see here I did a 9-minute, 20-second Blood Moon with full looting. I did the Phano pathing. Shout out Phano. I'm kind of testing the different pathing on Blood Moons since I never really enjoyed doing Blood Moons, but with this build, it's just incredibly effective. So I'm trying to do it more. Yeah, so that's the fundamental skill breakdown. of the skill itself, Fist of Fire. I really hope that helps people kind of understand the martial arts assassin. I know some people, shout out Stoic, just like to use it as a right-click build, and that's definitely viable. You're just definitely losing out on efficiency, but obviously efficiency isn't for everybody. So if you like, it's a totally capable right-click build, and it's going to be faster than most builds just based on the sheer firepower of Fist of Fires right now. Yeah. So here's a clone fight. I'm using a dual claw setup. That Jade Talon Fire Lizard I was talking about earlier. My gear is actually super scuffed for this. I did not put on my 8 max Noko for this. I realized after the fight. So I'm rocking 80 fire res for this instead of the usual 88 that you get off of water walks and an 8 max Noko. For tier 0 farming, you don't really need 90 fire res. It is advisable if you're new to the fight or if you're bad at dodging mechanics. But yeah, the 8 max Noko and the water walks is more than enough to farm D0 clone for some Annie sales. Yeah, but so on this, you're pretty much, trying to proc that fire Nova and then dragon flighting to an archer or a mage in the, P3 phase of skeletons. You do have weapon block, so that's huge. I do have 2 assassins just because on the mapper, the dex requirement for the max block on the shield really takes away from your hit points. I was farming tier 0 clone with dual claw on the, dex stacked assassin, but it's really not ideal. So I made a second assassin, one for map farming and one for bossing. As you could see, that clone without the Noko was super viable. Here we are doing a Rathma. If you noticed, I had on swap in the clone fight, I had the cold kill, which gives max cold res, and then I also had the unique Luna. I think it's like Black Oak or something. Just get my cold res to 15, overcapped up to 90. Shout out Big Boy. He got pierced by 2 Novas this season, just farming tier 0 clone on his Necro, which doesn't really allow you to run the cold kill Luna swap just because you're using Trang Shield, but you can definitely run the cold kill swap, which I would highly recommend. Generally you're bringing in like a lidless wall to get that 30 extra hit points off of your BO with the CTA. But for tier 0 farming, and honestly tier 2, I would say that 30 hit points is heavily outweighed by getting that max cold res to just make sure you don't get killed in the encounter and lose your character if you're hardcore. Now with the portals, I don't think it's a big deal on softcore, so I wouldn't even do that on softcore, but on hardcore, I'd say it's a necessity and would highly recommend it. Yeah. For Rathma, it's pretty much a very similar setup. I'll have the mapping, declone, and Rathma gear sets that I used, snapshotted armory links in the description. You can check that out there. At this point in the season, my build is, pretty expensive, just based on the items I've acquired, but all this can be done on very basic gear. So, I'd recommend, looking into whatever you need to do the fights you want to do. Yeah, but Rathma, you can see that P1 is pretty easy. You just got to dodge the towers, and that's pretty much the whole fight. Sometimes you need to antidote, most of the times you don't. Between phases, like pre-phase 1 and pre-phase 2, I'll charge up 2 of my Fist of Fire things, and then I'll pretty much just run through everything and Dragonflight onto Soul Packs, since my Lightning Res is really the only concern there. Having no PDR leads to, taking some high damage in the P3 trash mob phase. But, you'll have ample rejuve, so it's not a huge consideration. And yeah, more or less you're going to be fine. But yeah, Fist of Fires, I mean, you can see the damage. It's absolutely cracked. The Fire Lizard's Talon giving, natural 15 pierce plus 4 fire skills, and then your offhand Jade Talon giving plus 3 martial arts skills. That alone is just a lot of damage. And then, your 75 PLR amulet is going to have 2 to 3 skills on it, or even more if you get some lucky slams. So, I mean, the damage is just nutty. I've got 2 MA skill 25 PLR gloves on for the Rathma fight, which, yeah, I mean, the gearing for Fist of Fire is just very unique and really good. So if you're looking for a character that can map, do all bossing content, I'd highly recommend checking out this Fist of Fire assassin. Yeah. I'm gearing up for tier 2 Lucian just because doing tier 0 and tier 1 isn't really worth it, since the fight is more or less a joke if you have a competent build for it. Yeah, so I haven't really done that yet. I pretty much have the gear ready. I bought a max lightning res slam shaft stop from my buddy Liberal Sarcasm last night, and yeah, I'll have that Lucian build up soon TM, and I will make a video about that whenever I get around to it. Yeah, I've got the weekends off, so I'm kind of, going back into the work week, so I wouldn't expect that video within the next week or so. But yeah, in Rathma, the main focus for Fist of Fire is just clearing the cages, because I will say that's probably the least effective part of the build for this fight. And then yeah, Mendelin will go invulnerable during his poison phase, and you can still DPS because you will be dropping all those fire effects, the ground effect, the meteors. He's really only invulnerable pretty short time period. So just dropping those Fist of Fire charges on him, will be doing damage. You could transfer to Rathma if you wanted, but just being away from Rathma to not eat the bone spears is a little more ideal, I'd say. Well, yeah. That's the Fist of Fire build. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Tessa, I hope this video helps you, and yeah, you get a little more progression on your Fist of Fire Sin, since it is a really good build for all content. Sweet. Appreciate you guys watching. The best way to support me would be to subscribe here on YouTube. Like I said, the gear links, the armory are in the description, so feel free to check those out. And yeah, drop a comment in this video or join the Discord if you have a question. Discord links in the description as well. Awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope your season 12 goes smooth. Schmitward out.